Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Good evening. We are here tonight once again with Michael Denny, aka Thunder Wizard. Welcome back, Michael. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm
how
glad
have
to
you
be
been
here.
since we last spoke, since we last had our interview?
Well, the world is going through a massive shift. So I've been going through a massive shift. The most recent solar eclipse and the existing planetary alignment that all the planets are smashed up together in Pisces in the Vedic astrology, that's creating a lot of intensity in me. It's in my eighth house, which means transformation. So all of that is going on. I'm getting more and more information that's filling in the blanks for me about everything the light beings, the extraterrestrials, have been talking to me about over the past 2.5 years. So it's been, again, very interesting.
Okay, well, this is exciting. I cannot wait to hear all about it. We've got a few people coming in the chat. So we've got Tug of Light. Hello, hello, welcome. So glad to see you again. And we've also got Sarah. Hello from Minnesota. Hello to you as well. By the way, if anybody has questions for Michael, please feel free to put those in the chat. If you saw the video that we did with him, the interview, he discussed his experience with a mantis being. And he's had some other experiences as well. So feel free to put those questions in the chat. But I know tonight, Michael, what we talked about kind of getting started with, you had mentioned earlier that you wanted to talk a little bit about what are ETs specifically, right?
Yeah.
And then moving on from there, we'll talk a little bit about Earth as well. So why don't we get started with the conversation there and we'll kind of see where it leads to.
Okay. So, I think it's important, at the very least, for people to know what my base assumption is about all of this. And again, this is coming from my personal experience. So people are free to have their own opinions, agree with me, disagree with me. But at the very least, you should at least understand where I'm coming from, and what it means when I talk about certain things. And I think it's incredibly important. It means a lot to me personally, because we have been, as everybody knows, we have been given at best misinformation, half information. There's been human beings conflate. We don't know what's true and what's not. And of course, if you like I did growing up, reading Whitley Strieber and other things and hearing about extraterrestrials abducting people and doing horrible things to them that people can't talk about in polite society, and thinking that's what ETs are. Well, let me give you again the base assumption about reality. So that would be, from my definition, which I used to believe, is a third dimensional understanding of reality. And so what I've learned with my interactions with light beings is that Earth is a very unique little room in the cosmos, in the multiverse. And what happened in the beginning is that beings from multiple dimensions and multiple civilizations came together and created Earth together, with the design to make Earth a very challenging spiritual school, and that beings from all different civilizations have the opportunity to incarnate as humans. So that's important, because what we learn when we read books and watch movies is that there's humans and then there's other beings, and then we hear about supposed aliens coming and splicing our DNA with them, and but that again is a third dimensional assumption. And that is not what I've been shown. What I've been shown is that this was a cooperative thing. So every being that comes here, every human that's born is from some other place. Every human is a starseed. And we chose to come here knowing it was going to be extremely difficult. And extraterrestrials aren't, out looking around going, oh, look at that Earth, let's go check it out. They already know. They knew about Earth before it was created. They've been here the whole time, and they've been operating as angels and messengers and helpers. And from their perspective, they see us as their family. It's like if your brother or your cousin, your mom, your aunt says, hey, I'm going to go on vacation for 100 years on Earth. I'm going to go and incarnate as a human. I'm going to forget who you are for 100 years. Don't take it personally. That's what's going on. And they're there and they remember us. And imagine what it's like to have your family members whom you love more than anything, not only not remember you, but they're afraid of you. And worse than that, there are people on that planet telling stories about who you are that's just not true. So without getting into all the stuff that Dr. Greer has talked about, Dr. Stephen Greer, please go check out, if you're unfamiliar with his work, go check out his website and all the things he talks about. And he makes it very clear that things like abductions are actually done by humans who are pretending to be extraterrestrials, and they're using all kinds of very advanced technology that the average person doesn't know exists, so they don't know that they're being, played. ETs never do that. They never have, any more than your family member who loves you, whatever, would abduct you and experiment on you. It's just absolutely.
Or that it was a soul contract that you've had and you just forgot that you signed up for that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my base assumption. Believe it, accept it. That's fine. My personal experience is that if people do CE5 or the meditations that I teach, which is a slight different version of that, I call interdimensional meditation. If you do that on a regular basis and you connect with these light beings, you will find that the experience is far, far different than anything that is going on in the ufology crowd, the New Age crowd. And that's nobody's fault. That is our perception of the third dimension. We can't, I can't blame people because I had the same perception. We project our perception. We don't know any different. We project what we know. So I encourage people to do that so they can have a different perspective. Now, I'm warning you ahead of time. It will blow your mind. Absolutely, completely. It will completely destroy your understanding of yourself, reality, everything. But at the very least, you will be one of the few that knows what is really going on in this universe. Okay, so that was a long diatribe.
No, that was a good explanation, and there's definitely some crossovers based on what you just shared regarding people who have near-death experiences. Once they say they go to the other side, and because we have duality here on this planet, there is no duality on the other side. So they do come back with messages saying that they have to come to this planet in order to learn certain lessons, because there's no light versus dark. There's no good versus evil. There's no up versus down. Everything is just in a neutral state on the other side. So I can relate to a lot of what you just shared in regards to what messages come back from the other side for near-death experiences as well. But I just want to throw a few comments up here because we have some people commenting. So Sarah said, enjoyed the first interview with Thunder Wizard. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Tug of Light says, we have to learn to trust our own intuition without 3D proof. Absolutely, 100%. We do need to have some trust and some faith in things that we hear and that we that resonate true to us. It may not be true for everyone, but I always say, look in your heart and see what resonates with you. And then Tug of Light also says, healing planet to gain back ascension.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Emerald Covenant, ? So I'm not sure. Are you asking what is the Emerald Covenant? Is that something that you have any familiarity with, Michael?
It sounds very interesting. I've never heard of it.
Okay. Well, Tug of Light, maybe you can share a little bit more with us about that. And then you also mentioned tethered to these scuba suits. Yes. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, very good. I just also wanted to say, as soon as people started showing up, I felt the presence of the light beings very powerfully. And this is something that I've just recently surrendered to. Light beings came to me a few weeks ago, and they said, we have a question for you. Here's an idea. Why don't you start channeling us to people? And I went, okay. And if you remember from maybe our last discussion, I have been so contrary to all of that. I'm not a psychic. I don't believe in 95% of people who claim to channel. But what I can do is I can get messages and I can give them to people. So I do want to say that as soon as people started showing up, I really felt your guides are here. So if at some point people want to ask questions, about their life from their guides, I'm happy to at least check and see if there's any answers.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. If anybody in the comment section wants to put a question in, please put your question in the chat. Michael's happy to answer that for you. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, Michael, I know we talked a little bit also about when you were king of Atlantis, which is what you shared with us in the interview that we did. And then you had mentioned earlier that there's information regarding that I think you said you recently had information come in regarding that. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
Yes. So I'll try to make it brief because it's a big deal. But from the beginning, I did CE5 in June of 2022. And the first message was, I was king of Earth. And I thought, how is that even possible? And I'm also just trying to absorb the bizarre nature of the reality of talking to a 7-foot higher dimensional mantis being and the energy and the experience of other dimensions. All of that was going on. And then on top of it, they're telling me that I'm king of Earth. And it's extremely important that you believe what we're telling you. Okay, fine, I believe you. So then, as you know, not too long ago, some Pleiadians showed up and they asked, do you remember when you first met us? And they started telling me that I had been king of Earth and that I and other humans had been working with extraterrestrials, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Andromedans, of course. I'm an Andromedan. And we created the pyramids and all kinds of other very powerful spiritual technology. And they said, we were advising you to stop using the technology and you wouldn't listen to us. And because you didn't listen to us, it ended up creating the flood event that wiped out all of civilization. No pressure. That messed with me. I mean, the insanity of that, it wasn't just up until that point, the idea of king had just past life king had been an idea. I started remembering all of the feelings and all of this pain and sadness and shame. And it was very difficult for like 2 days. And then it finally settled. But the one thing that I couldn't understand, that didn't make sense to me, was why would I not listen to higher dimensional extraterrestrials? And so I believed them, and I'm trying to think, gosh, I must have been just really, I don't know, thick-headed or something. Why would I not listen? I knew that the reason I was doing it was because I wanted to continue, in case you guys don't know, the pyramids, among other things, were frequency generators that created a frequency that kept us in Satya Yuga, which is the highest, the golden age, when we're all 100% connected. And it mimics being close to the galactic center. So as Earth moves around in its orbit, it gets very close to the galactic center, and that is called Satya Yuga, and it happens every the 26,000 years or something. And we are like gods for a few thousand years. And then we go through these yuga cycles. And so I was trying to keep that going. So I understood that, but I couldn't understand why I wouldn't pay attention to what they were saying. And I just recently came across some historical writings from some historians in the Coptic tradition that talked about the king who built the pyramids. And the reason he built the pyramids was 300 years before the flood, he had a horrifying vision of a catastrophe. And it really bothered him, so much so that he got together with his priests and his astrologers, and they did all this work, and they found out there was going to be a flood. And so then he built the pyramids. And according to this historian, he built the pyramids specifically to house the knowledge for humanity. And so now that makes sense. I can see myself having that vision and being so overwhelmed with the responsibility of trying to save my people. And then light beings are coming and say, okay, we got to turn off the pyramids now. And I'm like, I can't. You have no idea what's coming. It's, so I can see that. And so for me, it finally all came together. I've made some videos on my channel. I won't get into all the details right now unless people want to ask later. But what I've come to realize is that the war, in case you don't know, there is a war going on. The deep state military on this planet have technology that is almost reaching to the level of extraterrestrial technology. They are shooting them out of the sky. There is no such thing as UFO crash retrieval. What it is, they're shooting them down and then they're retrieving them. So it's not crash retrieval. It's it's enemy warfare.
Mm-hmm.
That has been going on for 13,000 years, because what ended up happening, long story short, is that there was a rebellion. The people who rebelled fought against me because they wanted the technology to use to control the minds of human beings, to enslave them. And I didn't want that to happen. And there was this big war, and I was assassinated. They got the technology. They were creating weapons of mass destruction, including the pyramids, to shoot down aliens. And the higher dimensional said, "That's it. We're done. We're gonna start this all over. Let's delete this and start over." So now, bottom line is, I've got all that information, but it's incredibly important for disclosure, for human beings to understand that this war has been going on for 13,000 years, and that light beings, extraterrestrials, higher dimensional beings have been fighting a propaganda war, an energy war, a frequency war to help free our minds. It's been going on for 13,000 years.
And I do want to go to the chat in just a minute, but I also wanted to follow up to what you just said there. And what's interesting is, like, you're having these memories come back of your previous lives during these times. And, I'm kind of curious, and we don't have to get too deep into it, but I kind of wonder sometimes, like, how much does that affect how you relate to things in this life that you maybe weren't even aware, right? Before you had these memories, like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I know why I have this kind of a reaction in these situations. So, I think that's why it's helpful for people to tap into these memories if they have them.
Yeah.
Have you ever done hypnosis? Have you ever been put under to kind of see what you can come up with?
I have. And I again, it's a video I made on my channel, but the first time that I went into past life regression hypnosis, I remembered my first life on Earth as a Neanderthal. And what ended up happening was very similar to what I just described. It was a precursor. And what happened is that I was the protector to the shaman of our tribe. And so the shaman was the guy who decided who was going to be chief, because the spirits would tell him who was going to be chief. And so there was a lot of political power and intrigue and all that. You wouldn't think that Neanderthals had that, but even among, small groups of people, we still have all that nonsense. And so my job was, I was his protector. I was his bodyguard. And apparently I was some badass, because they couldn't do anything to him as long as I was around. And they bushwhacked me, and they threw me off a cliff so that they could, install their chief. Now, I remember dying. I remember, broken and mangled on the side of a cliff and looking up into the stars, and saying, wow, all I wanted to do was help. Why did they do this to me? I'm doing it for them. I'm helping everybody. Why? And that's how I died. And so it makes sense. You go forward into my life as the king of Atlantis. I have this obsession with saving and protecting, and nobody's going to take that away from me. And
Mm.
I end up causing problems. In this life, I ran into somebody not too long ago, and I became aware that I had a past life connection because all kinds of weird stuff started coming up. And light beings said, do you want to know who this person was? And I said, yes. Sure enough, it was one of those people who was in my inner circle,
Oh.
and was actually trying to help me. But because they were opposing me, I got furious with them. And I didn't know this person, and I was furious at them. And of course, I didn't get upset at them or anything. I just knew it inside. But also, people in my life, I've come to realize, there have been people who have treated me just really horribly for no reason. Everybody's gone through that. And I'm coming to realize those were people who unconsciously remember what I did.
Mm.
They don't know why they're so angry at me
Wow.
or why they don't like me,
Yeah.
but that's what it is. So, yeah, it is important to know that. And what I've come to believe is that the past lives that we remember are unresolved issues that we need to work on. We can't
Mhm.
remember all of our thousands because we've had thousands of lives.
Sure.
We remember the few that are really important.
Mhm. I mean, it just speaks to the power of energy, right?
Yeah.
That you are still maintaining these beliefs or understandings from prior lives and also with the people that you're interacting with too. Like in those
Yeah.
people recognizing, they're not recognizing you personally, but the energy is what they recognize.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go to the chat here. So we've got EP Pet, one of our channel favorites. Good to see you, EP. She says, or they say, I should say, I used to be afraid of praying mantis as a child. As an adult, I lost my fears and gained love and appreciation for them, and all over it looks like the past few years. And then there was another comment. I used to fear praying mantis. Okay, same thing. Okay, so few years they're showing up often, and I sense them before I see them. Yeah, what's interesting is I had a whole thing with praying mantis myself for like a little while where I would say like for a solid 2 months, I was seeing them everywhere. And they were like not out in the world, but like at my house. I
Yeah.
always like
Yeah.
I had one that clung on to the screen door that I have to my back patio. And he hung on there for like a solid week.
Yeah.
And he was just a little baby one. And then I had another one that clung on to the screen that looks into my bathroom, which I was like, can you not be there, please? Like, can we find a different spot? It's a little bit invasion of privacy there. And then I had a third one, again, all within like a what did I say? 2 week time span, 2 month. I can't remember. Anyway, he was on the plant by my front door and just a little tiny baby one. So I was like, okay, there's something to this. Like, I think
Yeah.
that that's a message in some way.
Yeah, I've come to the belief that many of the animals and insects are little totems left behind from, again, a cooperation of all different ET races that have created Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, snakes are one of them. There are snake beings, Naga beings who taught us Kundalini. And the mantis beings are very, very powerful warriors. So if a mantis
Oh, yeah.
is around you, you are being protected. So,
I like
very,
it.
very unusual. I had that happen too. In my house, a mantis being was on the door jamb, looking into my room. It's like, how the heck did you get in the house? And I
Oh,
asked him.
yeah.
I said, "Do you want me to put you outside?" And he flew into the drapes and disappeared. In other words, no, I'm staying. I'm
Yeah.
staying here.
No, I have my little spot over here. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Well, EP Pet wants to know, what is my purpose now at this time?
All right. So give me a second here. You're supposed to live with dignity towards your parents. I don't know what that means.
I think that's for me, actually.
Oh, is that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was for me. I really, that connects to me very, very
Okay. Yeah.
closely.
Yeah. Sometimes I just get words in it like a teletype.
Yeah. I mean, it
Uh,
could be for EP Pet too. Who knows? EP,
so
put a comment in if that's something that resonates for you.
we want you to understand that you're not alone. You're deeply loved. and we know what you've been going through. A lot of emotion there.
Yeah.
And we know how hard you're trying.
Mm.
Okay, so now they're telling me to explain my understanding of purpose. So I
That
will.
resonates for me too, by the way.
Uh,
It may resonate with a lot of people. So if it is something that you connect with, EP
as soon
Pet
as
says,
people
I often,
as
fear
soon
of
as
losing
people
my
started
parents.
showing up, I mean, I felt so much energy. So
Yeah.
they definitely want to communicate. All right, so
Yeah.
they wanted me to share my understanding of life purpose. So this is something I devoted an entire book to. But our purpose is already encoded within us, and it will manifest as the things that give you the greatest bliss and joy. And along with that, there will be resistance. So it's not like, oh, that's great, let's go do it. When you go after what you truly love and enjoy, you will bump up against your own karma and you will feel resistance. So your purpose is to fearlessly go after that thing that gives you the greatest joy. And sadly, there are some people that don't know what that is, and they conflate it with money and property and all kinds of other things. But so to answer your question, they told me to tell you that. Listen to your soul and let your soul bring to you something that just, even if it's for a split second, you're just filled with joy. Because what'll happen is you'll feel the joy and then your head will go, oh, I can't do that. We can't do that. That's silly. We can't afford that. And you talk yourself out of it. So you go, nope, that's what it says. And write it down, especially if you feel a lot of bliss, write it down, because the next day you're going to go, what? I wanted to surf for the rest of my life. What? You have to do it. That's, people say, what is God's will? Well, that's the commandment. That, for me, thou shalt live in subtropical beach areas and surf. That's my purpose in life. Yeah, it's
Hey, whatever
most
makes your heart
important.
sing, right?
Yeah. And it's extremely important. It's not just that you're doing it to be happy. You are accomplishing energetically something extremely important for everybody. When you awaken to your true happiness, all conscious beings, including the gods themselves, awaken. So we have to get rid of this idea that I'm here to run this business. I mean, you can do all that stuff if you want. And maybe that's your joy, maybe it isn't. Our real purpose is to be as happy and as completely connected to our spirit as possible. It's the most important thing. And in 3D Earth, we have to have things to do that allow us to do that.
Yeah, and I always think of it energetically. If you even if you're doing something, let's say, like you just said, let's say it's not to run a business, but just to be a human being, right? We're being humans, just be in our energy. And by doing that, that raises the level of consciousness for everyone. So you don't have to be doing things, you just have to be, right? And EP Pet mentions, I often fear of losing my parents. And I know that's a really tough thing to think about, and it's something that I think about often as well. And it can be a scary thing, especially if you don't have other family too. So that resonates for me as well. But just like Michael said, try just doing what you can to be in your own energy and raise that level of vibration any way you can, whatever makes your heart sing and makes you happy.
So EP Pet, I am getting some feeling based on that, and so they're saying just love your parents. I mean, if they're your parents and you live a normal life, you will lose them. That's what happens. But it's important to let them have their journey and to love them in that. Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message to end on. Tug of Light says, cool, I've been in perpetual initiation. I ask all the time, then I get stuck back into being mommy to 4D. Yeah, it's a tough one to kind of go back and forth between, as I always say, the 3D life and then our 4D to 5D
Yeah.
version of ourselves. You know, we try to live in this spiritual place as much as we can, but then there's always that thing that kind of like drags you back into the 3D. You know, you get a
Yep.
bill in the mail that, you know, you weren't expecting, or something that just causes you to go back into that mindset. So it is to me, it's still a little challenge to kind of always stay in that one mindset of progressing forward.
It is, and I completely relate to that. I mean, I'm as human and messed up as anybody, and maybe even more so. And what I'm continuing to learn is that this is the third dimension. And unfortunately, you know, our religions, even our spirituality, has sort of given us this feeling that we have to, you know, rise above, and that's just not possible. It's like trying to, you know, try to disengage gravity. It's not going to happen. You can walk, maybe you jump, but you're going to come back down to earth. And what I've come to find out is that we judge ourselves much too harshly. You can be in the deepest level of your spirituality and still be human, and being human is challenging, and that doesn't go away. Maybe when this whole 5D thing comes, depending on how that is, maybe that'll change. But until that happens, it's okay to be human and be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself.
Absolutely. And it sounds like that information rang true for EP. They said, yes, that resonates. I've been told this before. Thank you for the reminder, and I feel your heart flame. Beautiful. Well, you are beautiful as well. So thank you so much for that, EP. And we have Sarah as well, who is asking, is it the same for our pets?
our our pets are already there. Our
Yeah.
pets are you know, are in 5D. They
Yes.
understand. They're, I mean, think about it. The love that animals have for us is, I mean, no human can love you.
Unconditional.
Yeah, I
No.
mean,
Mm-mm.
there's a place, you know, that a cat or a dog can just fit inside you that no human can ever fit, and they
Absolutely.
never judge you. They
No.
never
And they
judge
never
you.
do wrong either.
Yeah, and yeah, they're cats and dogs, and they do stuff. They scratch and, you know, bite on things, but we understand that's their, you know, their
In their
instinct.
nature.
But
Yeah.
in terms of, yeah, is it the same for our pets? Our pets, your pets are waiting for you. They have a 5D version as well. They've chosen to come here. They've chosen to be with you. All that stuff is still true.
Yeah, it's interesting because if anyone who listens to me knows how much I love Bashar. I love Daralanka, who channels Bashar. I cannot get enough of his channeling. And I was just listening to something yesterday where he talked about cats, and he was saying how amazing cats are, where they can look into different dimensions. You know,
Mm.
they have that ability because they don't have the veil the way that we do. And it's funny because I oftentimes catch my cats where they'll like just be sitting on the couch and they're looking off into like a certain part of the room. And like what's interesting is the two of them do it and they're looking
Yeah,
at the same spot. So I know that there's something right there
yeah,
that I can't see. And their eyes get really big. And I'm just like, what is
yeah,
that?
yeah.
But they're
And
so incredibly intelligent.
dogs do that too. Dogs
Mhm.
dogs know when there's a ghost in the house. They'll let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah asks, did they come in the same way other animals and insects did? You mentioned animals earlier.
Are, I don't know. Are we talking about ETs, or are we talking about actual insects? I'm
Yeah.
not
Sarah,
sure.
if you want to ask a little more of that question so we can get you an answer, go ahead and put that in the chat and we can come back to that. And then in the meantime, Kelly has a question. Wonder what my purpose is as well. All I have ever known since the age of 7 is hardship in physical, mental, and financial. And
Okay.
then she also says, all I want is a better life.
All right. So give me a second here, Kelly, and let me see. They love you so much. There's so much love and emotion is coming through for you, Kelly. So apparently it's important that you know that. I can only assume you might feel alone and isolated like most humans do. They love you deeply. So let's see what else. You're going to find something special in your life very soon. And then they expand it out to everybody listening. You're going to find something in life very soon. There's going to be big changes coming for everybody. And Kelly, specifically, let's see, we want you to know how special and unique you are. You have a power within you you haven't discovered yet. You're allowing yourself to be distracted by the things that you mentioned, finances, and other things. And that's understandable. That's me. I understand. They don't understand that, by the way. You have to know that none of that stuff exists for them. So
Right.
they don't quite understand why it's such a big deal for us. But it is important to know you've been distracted by that, and your value has nothing to do with how much money you have. However, to meet your needs, now they're telling me to tell you what I've learned. So my experience with finances, resources, we should stop talking about finances, because the truth is money doesn't exist. It's an intellectual idea that we agree upon. If we stopped agreeing that money had value, it would stop having value. We can't stop agreeing that water, keeps us alive. No, that's not something we can negotiate. That's a physical reality. Money is not a physical reality. But money at this point is a resource. So what I said earlier about following your bliss and your joy, when you do that, the universe sees you as God. So people talk about the matrix, right? So we live in a third dimensional matrix. It has been programmed to respond this way. The world, the matrix, says God is coming to play a video game. We must give God what God wants. If God wants to be miserable, we will allow that scenario to happen. If God wants to be happy, we create that. And so when you follow your bliss and your joy, the matrix goes, oh, God is having a good time. God wants to start a business. God wants to move to Morocco. Let's give God all the resources.
More. Yes.
If that means money, great. And sometimes you don't need money. Somebody will come along and say, hey, do you want to live in my house for free and watch my dog? You know what I mean? So I just want to share that with whoever that was. I don't see the name.
That was Kelly.
Kelly. So Kelly, you're God. And you say, all I want is a better life. Great. You can choose to have that. I know it sounds very, cavalier of me to say that, but I can tell you from personal experience, what you do is you choose, you figure out in your mind your greatest fantasy. Maybe it might even be impossible for you. And the thing that gives you the greatest joy. Mine is I want to live in a subtropical, someplace in the world, lots of forest, beach, surfing, warm water. That's it. And I refuse to live any other way. And I don't have a lot of money. I up until this point have survived month to month. Sometimes, I've got lots of debt. So I understand all of that. But every single time what has happened is that something pops up. The perfect house pops up and somebody wants to rent to me. And it'll happen at the last minute. So Kelly, you can have that. And if you're not having it, it's because you have bought into the lie that you aren't worthy, you aren't lovable, you don't deserve it. And it's okay to have those feelings. Don't try and get rid of those feelings. You won't be able to. That's part of the 3D. Focus on my fantasy is, even if it's completely undoable, and then start taking action towards it. When you do that and you commit to that, a lot of people start and then they give up because it's too frightening.
Yeah.
Don't let the fear stop you. And doesn't matter that you don't feel like maybe you don't deserve it. That's just a feeling. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
My
Well, that's the
ancestors.
resistance. That's the resistance. When you have this feeling of unworthiness, that is what actually is holding you back from achieving or gaining the things that you want for yourself. So you always have to ask yourself these questions of, what must I believe in order to believe that's true? because source creator, God, whatever you want to call it, loves us so much that he allows for us to feel like we're not worthy. That's how much he loves us. He allows us to actually have that feeling, but it's a choice. It's actually a choice
Yeah.
that you're making, because if you really, really look at it and dig underneath, you'll see that that's actually not true. There's no truth to it. And once you shine
Yep.
that light of awareness on that lie, as you were mentioning, that once you shine that light of awareness on it, it dissipates, and once that resistance dissipates, that's when you can move forward and raise that vibration and move towards the things that you want for yourself.
My ancestors, I'm descended from Vikings, but they had a life philosophy. Those who die in battle go to Valhalla, right? So it doesn't mean you go get your head cut off and you go to Valhalla. What it means is that, when it comes to battle, they didn't say those that overcome their fear of death go into battle. They didn't say that. The assumption is you're going to battle and you're scared to death, but nothing is stopping you from showing up. So when you know what it is that you want, the fear could be there and it might be crippling and the feeling might not go away, but your actions, consistent and deliberate actions contrary to all of your fears and impulses, that will start to change your brain chemistry. But most importantly, again, the universe goes, let's give them everything we want, everything that they want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Tug of Light is saying, I'm a homeschooling mom of 4 kids. Ultimate distractions. I would absolutely imagine so with 4 kids. Was I a Pleiadian star mother? And will I find my tribe who recognizes and appreciates my woo-woo healing abilities and ideas? Well, you are certainly welcome here, Tug of Light. I love when I see your name in the comments. So you've definitely found your tribe with us, but I'm going to let Michael chime in on this.
Yeah, and my hair is off to you for having 4 kids. I couldn't do it, so you're definitely stronger than I am. So you're asking me, was I a Pleiadian star mother? Let me see. The light beings are laughing in a good way. They like she gets it. So I'm gonna assume the answer to that is yes. And then let's see. There's something else important they want to say. She says you don't understand who you are. We know who you are. And then now they're calling you mother. So I assume that must be true. That is a very powerful awakening. I didn't awaken to that level of power in myself until, I'd been cracked open by, crazy intense experiences with ETs. So it's going to sound so give me a second here. So our job as starseeds is we are in the process of opening, like from above, we are opening a channel so that we can expand into our 5D essence. So that Pleiadian star mother, you are that already still in higher dimensions. Bear in mind, this is a video game. So it's just like in 3D life, if you're sitting on the couch and you're playing a video game, your focus is on that little pixelated character running around. And as long as we're focused on it, that's all we're aware of. But as soon as we press stop or pause, our world becomes much huger. We never stopped being this, much larger being. It's just that's our focus. So again, we're here for 100 years or less, and our focus is completely on this video game, and we forget. So that Pleiadian star mother is there playing a video game. If you want, you can press pause, call that meditation or whatever, and imagine that your higher self is coming in and you get to expand. So it's like giving your 3D video game character an upgrade. You can choose to do that. And this is something we weren't able to do before. But because we're going through this dimensional shift, we're now starting to do that. And in fact, that is what we are being called to do. And eventually what's going to happen, it's happening with me more and more as time goes on, but it's going to happen for everybody, which is people are going to be walking around in their 3rd dimensional body, and they are going to be in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And that is the key to the shift. And it's also the key to having a better life, because you can't hate yourself and feel crappy about yourself while expanding into your higher self. It's impossible.
Right. Right.
Anyway.
Absolutely. And looks like she got that as well. Oh, yes, I get it. That's how I describe this game to my kids. So I think definitely that video game concept relates to for a lot of us. So it's a good way to describe that. Sarah is asking, a lot of my friends and family are having challenging times financially. Do you see some relief soon?
Okay, so all right. Before I give my take, let me see what they say. They're laughing. They think it's so funny. And bear
It
in
wouldn't
mind,
be
from
that funny if they were here and they had to pay bills.
that's what I was going to say. From their perspective, because
Right.
they can see from their perspective financial challenges and living in intentional prosperity is that easy.
Right.
It's true, but we don't see that. We don't experience that. So I encourage you, Sarah Eyre, to be open to shifting your definition of what that means. In other words, do you see some relief coming soon, as though finances and prosperity are something outside of you that are going to come to you? And that's not necessarily how it has to work. So going back to what I said earlier, let go of and again, this goes back to what I said in the beginning. There's been a 13,000 year propaganda war. That propaganda war, bear in mind the idea of finances. We use the word the economy in the same way that we use the weather. Well, the weather is a real thing. The economy is completely made up. Money is a completely made up concept. So if you're able to focus, again, your intention on, I deserve to have everything that I want. And what will give me everything that I want is living my peace, my joy, my bliss, and taking direct action to achieve that, regardless of how difficult it is. When you do that, you are guaranteed, I'll repeat it, when you take direct, fearless action on your bliss, you are guaranteed prosperity. Again, prosperity doesn't mean money, because money is a concept. Maybe it means money, maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't exist. What it means is the house that you want. I mean, I'm living it now, and I shouldn't be here. The only reason I have the house that I have is because I ran into people who owned the house and wanted to rent it to somebody that they knew. If they had done their work and looked at my credit score and everything else, they would have said, oh my God, I'm not going to rent to that guy. So it was impossible for me to be living the life that I'm living. But because I follow that, the universe always, sometimes right at the last minute. So a lot of you and your friends, so it's an individual thing. Now, whether or not your friends or family members are going to make the decision to live from that understanding is their own decision. You can't make that for them, but you can make it for yourself. And by doing that, you become an example. And then they'll go, how is it you're living that way? And then you can go, I'm glad you asked. Tell me, what is it that makes you really happy? Well, what makes me really happy is to make videos about cooking. I wish I could spend my life doing that. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. No, I can't do that. I have kids and I have a mortgage. And well, they'll either choose to go, okay, I'll give it a try. I'll do it, or I won't. But you can make the decision, and then you will be the example. And this has more to, it's more than just, petty needs. It's helping everybody on planet Earth shift. Because in 5D, there's no money, there's no poverty, there's no violence, there's none of that. We know that. The Earth gives everything that we need, but we've chosen to allow some people to hoard the resources, and they control us. But the truth is, there's infinite resources. And if you understand that and live from that, my experience is the universe will give it to you. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, and also on the Hawkins scale of vibration and frequency, gratitude, love, peace, those are all on the higher vibrational scale, right? And then below that on the low end is where you have your hate and you have your all the negative feelings that you can have,
Fear.
remorse, fear. And when it comes to abundance, if you are in a moment where you need abundance, right? Let's say, and by the way, abundance can be anything. It doesn't just have to be financial. Just look around you and just be grateful for the things you have, because everything that's around you is abundance. It's something that you had to pay money for to get, right? The place that you're living, the chair that you're sitting in, the pen that you're writing with. Every single one of these things cost money. And so if you start going into a place of gratitude for, oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a home, that I have a chair to sit in. That actually will raise your vibration, which, by the way, then puts you in the same space that you can now receive the abundance that you're desiring. So that's kind of like the hidden trick is you have to get to where you want to be already. You have to already be in that space of, I already have it, because it's already here. Everything you desire is here already. It's just hidden from you. So you have to move your vibration up in order to have it be revealed to you. And actually, Joe has a comment here kind of along the same lines. Financial struggles. It's all over the world now because the world is splitting up in two. So I'm curious, Michael, what you can share with us about that.
Well, it's a big statement. Again, financial struggles can be a definition. So if I wanted to, I could decide I was having financial struggles and I'd be able to back it up. But I don't do that because like you were saying, focusing on gratitude. So sometimes I wake up like everybody else and I have all that stuff on my, weighing on me, and I will go and take a walk and I'll spend as long as I need to. And I will go through all of the list of the things that I can be great. I mean, both my eyes work. I'm completely healthy. My feet work. I mean, those are little things. There are people, I live in Florida. There's a lot of old people here. So there's a lot of people walking around with walkers and I go, I'm not that guy. Wow, I could be that guy. I'm going to go to the gym and lift weights. So you can be grateful for anything. And it's okay if your feelings are telling you the opposite. This is really important. One of the things, it is important if you can shift your actual emotions, that is awesome. But some people can't. We have very limited control over what we're feeling in the moment. We have very limited control over what we're thinking, things that just pop up in our head. But we do have control over what we choose to focus on. And we do have control over what actions we take. And I'm very action oriented because it actually makes things happen. In 3D, actions make things happen. In 5D, your intentions make things happen. In 3D, your actions prove your intentions. So I will spend hours making myself grateful. And what happens is what you focus on that gives you gratitude, what you focus on expands. And when I focus on what makes me grateful, then the universe responds with more things that I can be grateful about. If you focus on what limits you, you will create more limitation. The first thing that the ET told me when he showed up, he said, "You are a probability." And we talked about that for a while. I was taken to a place where I could see all these little orbs. And in the orbs were entire worlds. And my understanding was that each one of those orbs was a probable reality that I could choose to live in. So he said, "What do you want?" So I said, okay, I got to get this right. And I thought about exactly what I wanted, which had to do with where I wanted to live. And then he says, okay, now create it. So I created it in my fantasy. And then there was this orb and I could see that it was that world. And he says, now go in there and live there. So I went and focused and I imagined myself with all the details. I imagined where the house was, what I was doing. I imagined all of that. And then I came out and he says, okay, now you're going to have it. And within months, I was living on the side of a mountain in Australia, overlooking the ocean. I had literally the best house, in my opinion, in the entire Australian continent. And I was paying almost nothing to be there. And I went, oh my God, this was that world. This is how important that is. So again, financial struggles, it's a made up concept. If you choose to believe in finances, then you can choose to believe in financial struggles. But again, our financial struggles, compared to the people in Gaza, compared to the people who live with nothing, compared to people who live in the wilderness and have to every day get up and go find grubs or go find fish or go find, squirrels to eat. It's all based on what you define. And if you change your definitions about things, then none of this has to be real. So anyway, the world splitting up in two, that's a good question. We could go and talk a lot about that, but I won't take up people's time on that.
Yeah, that'll be a different topic,
Yeah.
I think, because we are kind of in this like mitosis where we're kind of separating from 3D and 5 into 5D. But just to kind of tag on to what you were just saying there, Michael, and it's amazing how energy works. Energy, I mean, things can change in your life like that. Because everything that you want is here already. So if you put that intention and that focus, like you said, and that energy on the things that you desire and you raise your vibration, I mean, you'll be shocked at how quickly you can turn your life around. And it will be like something you can manifest something out of nowhere that you maybe, otherwise would never have expected. But the belief has to be there. Because if you have that belief that you can't, guess what? You won't. So you have to believe that you can in order for that to happen. EP Pet says hidden secrets of Egypt are coming to light more in the 3D, absolutely, and even more so in the spiritual and consciously enlightened communities. Why now during this age of Aquarius paradigm shift time of ascension?
I'm assuming that's a question. Why now?
Yes.
I would love to answer that. So 3D has actually come to an end. This is why it's so silly to worry about 3D stuff. 3D has come to an end. We haven't seen that completely manifest yet. But again, part of that has to do with our focus and our projection. So why is this all happening now? All right. So I think we talked about this in the first interview. I'll make it extremely brief. Earth is an isolated video game experiment for the soul, and souls come here specifically to be put under extreme pressure in order to really authentically go as deep within and find their soul as possible. But we have multiple lives because some lives we don't get it. And those are the lives that you look back on and then some lives we finally go, what's important is my soul. And we find that. And the main thing that people come to learn, your video game is, all right, so imagine yourself outside of 3D. You're a huge deity. You're already connected to everything. Everything is blissful. There's not a whole lot of pressure on you. You're just enjoying reality. So you want to learn more about consciousness. So you say to yourself, what would consciousness be like if I was fill in the blank with your current life situation? That's what you came here to find out. So there's only so many questions that can be asked within the third dimensional video game. And we've been here for, depending on who you talk to as humans, we've been here for 300,000-400,000. If we include the Neanderthals, we've been here for hundreds of thousands of years. We have answered all of the possible questions, the permutations for third dimensional soul existence. They've all been answered. So now 3D is going to be deleted. And we are in that process. The truth is that it's already been deleted. It probably happened during the 2012 shift that the Mayans talked about. That's when it happened. We've been in a kind of a placeholder video game. That's why the Mandela effect exists. why there's not only different memories of the past, but you can go and look at different films of the exact same thing and they're not the same. It's because everything is fuzzy, that everything is starting to shift. And so we are splitting in two. We're going into the new world that is being created, and we have to go the level up to ask more questions. What is consciousness like when you can sit on a cloud and manifest your reality? That creates a whole new video game question. So that's my answer to that.
Okay, great. Let's see. Joe has another question. There are some countries that are ascending. Is Australia one of them?
If we're talking about ascension, meaning the mindset of people, yes, absolutely. Australia is one of them. But Australia is no different than any other country in the world. You know, we're all connected on the same consciousness frequency, and some of us are more ahead than others. But yeah, I mean, if I were able to still live there, I'd live there. I'm supposed to be here right now, so I'm here. But yeah, I love Australia.
Mm-hmm. He said, where I am, 3D is ending very fast. Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne, definitely. I lived up in the Sunshine Coast, so I was away from all of the city stuff. But there was a lot of crazy stuff happening in the cities when I was there.
Mm-hmm. Dee's asking, may I ask if Ferris wheels are portals? Every country and major city has them. Interesting. I never thought of that.
I'm okay with that. The ETs are laughing. I can't give you a yes or no, because the truth is anything is a portal. If you're the portal.
Yeah.
So if Ferris wheels are portals in your experience, I would not be able to refute that.
By the way, I have this little thought that I have. I picked it up somewhere. Someone mentioned it one time. I think that ETs love to come here and go to amusement parks. Because I think, I mean, they get a flavor of everything that's here. Like if you ever go to an amusement park, there's a little bit of everything. And like that, if I was an ET, I would totally do that, because that would just be fascinating just to kind of like watch what goes on.
You know, one of the experiences that I have had that was completely contrary to everything that I had believed, you know, because we're led to believe that ETs are, you know, because they're intellectually above us, they're like these psychopath, you know, AI, you know, that's how, take me to your leader. We just assume that. But my experience, which blew me away, was that they are the most childlike, happy, loving. And by the way, the love in higher dimensions is far beyond anything we can imagine. If we were to experience even 10% of it, we would explode. So I agree with you. I mean, I mean, their reality is an amusement park.
Right. Absolutely. Tug of light. I feel like a big old lighthouse walking around. But it would be so nice to bump up and co-create with fellow players who get it, that are in my zip code. My poor hubby struggles. Aw, well, if you want to put your zip code in the comment, we'll see if anybody is near you. So I think that's a great idea. I love that. EP Pet says, what is your perspective on the narrative of nefarious mantis that have been involved in human abductions, laboratory experiments, super soldier 20 and back experiences? Good and bad everywhere.
Okay, I will give you my thought on that again. Again, this goes back to I like for people to know my assumption, which has changed. This is not what I believed 3 years ago. So, and I completely 100% agree with Dr. Greer. There are no evil ETs. Why is that? Because they're not third dimensional beings. Evil is in the third dimension and below. Now, people who have had these abduction experiences that you talk about are real. But what has been going on is that the dark forces, who have been for 13,000 years, they have been at war with extraterrestrials. They have been propagating a propaganda war this whole time. So as we hit, it was right around 1962. That was the first abduction that was recorded. And if you go and, if you hear the generalities of it, it's the same thing. Betty and Barney Hill were taken, they were experimented on. But then when you go and look at the details, you find out it is obviously something that was fictionally made up by humans in 1962. So did Betty and Barney Hill get abducted? Yes. Were they abducted by extraterrestrials? No. They were abducted by humans using suits, using higher frequency things to pump things into their brain. And here's the two of the big things. One is these supposed beings, bear in mind, who supposedly came from Zeta Reticuli and came all the way through wormholes and faster than the speed of light and came to Earth, but for some reason they couldn't understand what dentures were. If you look at the specifics, they were trying to convince the aliens what dentures were. They couldn't figure it out. And the other one was that they did a pregnancy test on Betty. Now, right now, if you wanted to get a pregnancy test, you can simply do it. All you got to do is go to the grocery store or the CVS, you take a little thing home and you don't have to have any invasive surgery. Well, these advanced Zeta Reticuli, again, came up from billions of light years, they had to pull out a huge needle and they had to stick it in her navel and try and pull out amniotic fluid. So you're telling me that they couldn't just have her pee on something? They didn't have the ability to do that? It's
right. They should be more advanced than that.
Humans created this. These dark force humans have been experimenting on, abusing. They have been putting mind games on us for 13,000 years. So I can tell you, again, my experience, mantis beings are the most loving beings in existence, and there is zero, in my experience, there are zero extraterrestrials that are doing anything even close to this, because they live in a dimension that is filled with love. It's not that it's impossible for there to be good and bad. In the third dimension, there are. You go up to a higher frequency, there's no hate, there's no fear, there's none of that. It doesn't even enter their minds. And that doesn't even take into account, from their perspective, you're their family member. You used to be an Andromedan, and you used to be a mantis being. You chose to be human. So when they look at you, they see their family member. The last thing they're going to do is hurt you. It's not even going to enter their mind, even if they were third dimensional beings. They wouldn't do it. So thank you for the question. Again, that's my opinion. Believe it, don't believe it. That's your choice.
So Richard said he just got in late. Welcome, Richard. We're so glad you made it. And for anyone listening, if you have any questions for Michael, he's tapping into his light beings to kind of give us some answers. So if you have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat. And we do have one here from Kelly again, asking what of the free energy tech will be released?
Okay, so again, I can talk from the ET's perspective. ETs may not know what humans are going to do. So I don't know that I can give you that. So let's see if they can look into the future and tell it. And bear in mind, every future is a potential probable reality. We choose which probable reality we want to create. So my first, smartass response to your question is, you decide. If you decide what free energy tech will be released, that's what will be released. That's your job. Now, let's see. What do the light beings have to say? Wow. Even I am blown away by this answer. Here it comes. They say, we don't care. We're not interested in technology. We're interested in love. We're interested in your soul. We use technology to get closer to the soul. Humans use technology to get further away from it. So they're not going to answer because, again, they don't care. And the other answer to that question is my personal experience. Here's something that humans don't know. I had to learn this the hard way. It completely almost destroyed me. You ready? You are more powerful than extraterrestrials, even though they live in a higher dimension, because only the most powerful of intentional beings can become human. And when human beings harness their ability to intend their reality, they create entire universes. And the ETs are in awe of us. When we go out and meditate, for the people that come onto my channel and do the live guided meditations, afterwards, I almost always get, a progress report from the meditation. And the ETs will come back, the light beings will come back, even demigods will come back, and they will say, I've never seen anything like that before. You have no idea what you're doing. They need us to meditate. They need us to intend reality for their reality to expand. So we need to shift that. It's hard to, because we feel, again, we're inside of a third dimensional video game. So it feels like this is our entire reality, but it's not. It's just a perception. So I'm sorry I couldn't give you a psychic answer on what's going forward, but we can go beyond that. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound very egotistical, but this is coming from my experience and coming from them. What I'm able to do in meditation far exceeds anything that can be done with even ET technology. So the same is true for everybody listening.
Nice. And EP Pet hits the nail on the head. So love heals. We don't need to worry about technology. Right. I love that. Love is probably the most powerful energy there is.
Love is, God is love, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so the other thing we talked about briefly, and I know you mentioned you had an awareness about the pyramids. So we did mention, there was a mention of that earlier, and obviously there's been a recent discovery, let's call it, that there's more under the pyramids, which I think we all knew that, but it's good that we're catching up with the times. That we actually officially know it now, that there's a lot more under the pyramids than what we're led to believe. And I'd love for you to share what your awareness is about what's under the pyramids.
Thank you. Yeah. So I don't know how I knew this even years ago. I knew this. I don't know where I picked it up, but I picked it up somewhere. I remember. It came from an Egyptian priest still alive today. In case people don't know, there still is the original priesthood. They're not recognized as such, but they go, they're the priesthood that goes before the pharaohs. The pharaohs were another culture that came in and, sort of commandeered the whole Egyptian thing and had a lot of stuff. But there was the culture 13,000 years ago that built it. And again, what I learned from that was that the pyramids were frequency generators. And they were frequency generators that you can, there's all kinds of things that underneath, water goes underneath it. Of course, it's connected to the earth, so the frequency of the earth. But it was also human vocal chanting, as well as intentions, and we know that people like, for instance, what's his name? The French guy, Napoleon spent the night in the king's chamber, and he came out with his eyes like this, and they said, what happened? He said, I don't want to talk about it. It was such a powerful experience for him. There are people out there that say that the king's chamber is a stargate. But one of the things that the pyramids were there to do was to create a frequency, which we would call 5D. And it was done, and it's in the navel of the earth. And this, we know that. If you look for the navel of all the land masses, it's right there on the Giza Plateau. And so the pyramids create a frequency that goes over the whole world that kept people's minds in a higher frequency. That was one thing. Now, I don't know that I've shared this. This is something that was new to me that I just realized. The reason why the Pleiadians were telling me that I had to power down the pyramids, because again, I was doing that to save the world from going into Kali Yuga. Way back then, 13,000 years ago, I saw that the earth was going to fall into Kali Yuga, and I had to stop that. I was so, codependently obsessed with protecting everybody. And the Pleiadians who had helped build the pyramids said, we have to power it down now. we're going into another phase. And what they told me was, I'm remembering more and more of this, what they told me was, we wanted to do this because we wanted to experience the greatest Satya Yuga, golden age energy that we could while we could. But this is an external piece of technology, and it's meant to teach you what the human body is capable of. Everything that you've done with these pyramids, every human can do. And as we were going back down towards the lower frequencies of Kali Yuga, my job was to teach people meditation and energy work so that they would go deep within and find the power from within. So that's what people are finding, that, yeah, underneath there's all this huge, who knows what kind of, technology and machines underneath there, but those were designed to create frequency generators. The problem was that when there was the rebellion against, when they rebelled against the Atlantean rulership, the dark forces wanted to use it to create mental hypnosis. They wanted to hypnotize the whole world. They wanted to change the frequency so they could turn everybody into zombie slaves. And that, among other things, when they started experimenting with that and trying to make that happen, the higher dimensionals, the councils got together and said, we got to stop this. So the pyramids, the greatest gift that the pyramids can give us now, and people are going to, when they do more research, they're going to, remember I told you these things, they're going to tell you that the pyramids are actually teaching us how to open up our chakras, how to create and manifest these energies ourselves. And that was the greatest gift of that. And unfortunately, a lot of us missed that lesson. So anyway, I babbled on. I don't know if I answered the question or not.
Well, I think we're coming into that time when we are going to have those answers now. It seems like we're finally digging in and catching up. And Kelly has the question, is the boat still in the Great Pyramid?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That remains to be seen, Kelly. We'll find out hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Claire had a question. Linda Moulton Howe did an interview from Coast to Coast in the 80s, which also confirmed what you said on humans and aliens, which is so interesting. And also, she asks, is this the man who I once heard talk about called on Odin, Vil, and V? I think you have, this is something
Odin,
you've spoken about,
Vil, and
right?
That was the Norse Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The Hindus have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and the Taoists have heaven, earth, and man. And the ancient Germanics, pre-Christian Germanics, had Odin, Vili, and Ve. And the term Odin comes from Wod, which means where we get, we now have the word, we go, whoa. That's what it comes from. It's actually like awareness and awe, the third eye opening. Vili comes from, we have the word village. It means coming together in a sacred space, and that's the heart center. And excuse me, that's the navel center. It means power. Vili means power, the navel, sorry. And Ve means temple, and that's the heart center. So we have the third eye, the navel, and the heart. So yes, that was me. I spent years researching and relearning all that stuff and wrote books about it, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that why Milli Vanilli was so popular in the early 90s?
That has to be.
I'm dating myself right now. If there's anybody like under the age of like 30, they're like, what in the world is Milli Vanilli? Okay, EP said, why do you think the movies of old depict slaves as the ones who built the pyramids instead of levitation and frequency?
Oh, there's so many answers to that question. The first one is again, these dark force elites. Here's what happened after the flood. So after the flood, the elites who had by this time taken over were turning the technology into weapons of mass destruction, who had started a war against extraterrestrials that started 13,000 years ago. And then, of course, the flood came, wiped all that out. So there was a handful of elites that remembered this. They broke up into two groups. One group woke up and went, what the heck have we done? What did we do? They're what we would call the white hats. And those are the people that went around and taught the Mayans and taught other people, built pyramids, the Mayans are the ones that knew that 3D was going to end in 2012. So those were the white hats. The dark hats, they got together and they created dark religions. And I won't get into too much specifics, but the monotheist religion where you're evil and you're going to be thrown into hell and you have to do God's will and you can't use your own common sense, you have to give away your understanding to common sense and, you're a worthless piece of garbage. That is the propaganda, mind control creation of the dark hats. And so why we now are told, and why even now, if you try and study the pyramids, the powers that be in Egypt will shut you down in a second if you're not telling them that story, that slaves with, hemp ropes, are somehow pulling up, 2-ton blocks up, a giant great. And, the truth is we don't have the technology to build the pyramids now. We couldn't. They've tried. They can't. So it had to have been done with technology far beyond what we have. So this is a lie. And when everybody is forced to believe that, this goes into the unconscious and we relate and we think we are those slaves. We think we are slaves. We think we are there and what is the world? I mean, we live in a world, this is so crazy. Even if we go back to 2000 when, supposedly things were easier and better. People worked their tails off for at least 40 hours a week to make just enough money to pay their bills. And they felt they were free if they could spend the weekend going off to Vegas or, riding their jet ski somewhere. And they thought that's what life was, that you worked your butt off to earn this thing called money that doesn't really exist so that you can get a credit score, so that you can get a mortgage. The definition of mortgage in Latin means death grip.
Right.
So that you're a slave to these elites. Mm-hmm. That's why they do that. And that's why they still talk about it. And that's why it was laughable. I laughed at it. The idea that, and this comes from the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians, if you look, you will find that they say the way that they moved the blocks was that they put sacred talismans on the thing, which levitated the block. And, that sounds crazy to us. Mm-hmm. Except that we have the ability to use frequencies. You can do it with a glass. If you sing at the right frequency, you'll shatter the glass. Mm-hmm. So the short answer is it's part of the 13,000-year-old mind control from the elites. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's a man in Florida, if I recall correctly. I remember reading this story. This was several years back. And he created, like, in his yard, or he must have a big property, all these like monolithic stone monuments. And he, again, same as what you were just saying in regards to the pyramids, we still don't have the technology to move the size and the weight of the rocks that he had. And he said he did it through manipulation of sound. Yeah. And so, it's just fascinating. But a lot remains to be seen there as well. So EP Pet is saying, do you have any take on why the 33rd degree Masons have such a deep tentacles in our society?
Well, I'm not an expert on that, but I think it's pretty clear, that's part of the, as we've known, that's part of the old black hat remainder. They've split off into little splinter groups. And here's something, the black hats lost a lot of their knowledge. So they're trying to figure it out and pick it up, and they're making mistakes as they go. But yeah, they have, it's obvious. We all know that. They're secret societies, and we now know that the Bushes were all part of a secret society. It's just coming out now that Barack Obama was, that, whether you believe it or not, but I don't disbelieve it. So the answer to your question is, it's that old black hat, deep state, dark force, evil people that rebelled against me 13,000 years ago.
You still hold a grudge. Claire, you're absolutely right. That was what I was looking for. Coral Castle.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's the name of the man who kind of created his own rock formations. I'm sure I'm not getting the details correct, but it was a fascinating story. So if you look into Coral Castle, you'll find out more. Seth is asking, or Isaiah chapter 58, 1-2, let your voice be the trumpet of God. Okay, let's see. God, it's time for the 7 archangel. Michael, that's a lot of words. Michael blow the last trumpet ET sound is coming. Okay, interesting. Game over, game over.
Yeah. Works for me.
Yeah.
It's even got my name in
Tug,
there.
there you go. Tug of Light. I'm curious if I'm supposed to stay put here in Asheville, North Carolina, or am I meant to be traveling this realm and beyond the ice walls?
Everybody's silent, and the reason is you have to answer that question. It's not
Yeah.
about supposed to. There's nobody
Right.
has you're meant to do this, you're meant to do that. You wrote your script, so you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? The way you know what you're meant to do is what you want more than anything. People want to know, what is God's will? God's will is your deepest desire. You must fulfill it. So you're able to answer that question. We can't
Yeah.
answer it.
Energetically, just tap into your heart and you know the answer. It's
Yeah.
there for you. You just
Right.
have to trust. You have to trust. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? It's just knowing and trusting that we do have the answers instead of looking outside of ourselves, knowing that we actually have the answers ourselves.
Yeah.
EP Pet says, how do you see the youth and incoming babies going to affect the new world that's being created?
Well, we can see that now. I mean, kids now are, number one, incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
And in some countries like, I know somebody that works as a teacher in the UK, but it's probably true here in the US that little kids are, younger kids and even, young teenagers having a very difficult time in this world. It's because they're already at that place that I've been talking about. There's no money, there's no war, there's no governments.
Yeah.
They're already at that place. So they're in a really difficult foreign place to be. But we already see this in babies, even animals. Animals are getting smarter. Animals are communicating in English. I mean, they've got animals that step on the little buttons to communicate. I don't know
I
if you've
have
seen
them. I have those little talk buttons for my cats. Of course, I haven't been able to teach them how to
Yeah,
use
it
it
takes some.
yet because my one cat thinks it's hilarious to tap on the buttons at midnight when I'm trying to sleep because he knows it's going to get me up to give him a treat. So I had to take the buttons away for a while. So I think we have to start the training process all over on that. But you're right. They are extremely intelligent. And it's amazing to me how the kids are coming in with all of these these awarenesses of being a cosmic being and knowing where they came from and just tapped in to these psionic abilities immediately. I'm jealous. I'm like, it took
So
me a long time to learn what I learned.
yeah, me too. Yeah. So, I think that they're coming in already pre-programmed for 5D.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did an interview with Mary Rodwell. If you know who she is like Barbara Lamb, where she's done hypnosis and past life regressions, back when it was unpopular to do so. I mean, we're talking like 50 years ago. And she has a whole book actually on the rainbow children, the crystal children, how they're coming in with neurodivergence. And just like what she is seeing through hypnosis and what they're remembering is just incredible. The amount of information that comes through from them, even just young children, and not under hypnosis, by the way. This is just them coming in tapped in because the veil is so thin still for them. And they can still communicate with the other side. But let's see here. We've got some more questions. Sunny says, may have missed it. What is his opinion when traveling beyond the ice wall is possible? When will that be possible?
Okay. So if you can correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're referring to the ice wall around Antarctica, which would be a flat Earth
that's the
assumption
concept.
about reality. So I don't share that assumption about the world. So I'm going to say we can already go past that. Again, it's okay with me if you disagree. So that's my opinion.
I think And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an assumption that some people have, is that, and I've had Honey Golden on in the past, and we've talked a lot about this, and a lot of people in the chat will know who she is. And she actually sort of brought a picture up on screen for us too, to kind of show us that, her understanding is that Earth is actually much larger than what we've been led to believe because of this ice wall. And it's not necessarily that there's a flat Earth, but the concept is adopted because of the fact that the ice wall kind of creates sort of like the flat, that's the flat version of, the pole where Antarctica is. And so because we can't go beyond that specific area, we're not allowed to go beyond it. That's why the whole flat Earth theory came about, but that Earth is actually much larger than what we expect. We just haven't had access to those areas yet.
Well, then let me give this answer. So there's a lot of disagreements about certain beliefs about what reality is, including this. What I've come to find out, because if you had talked to me 5 years ago, I would have come to you with a scientific, but I've come to realize that even if I disagree with technically what somebody is saying, there is a spiritual truth behind it. So here's something that I learned. And again, if you want to take this ice wall idea back to what I was saying, we live in a closed third dimensional environment. Even when we're looking off into space with telescopes, we're not looking into infinity. It looks like that because light bends in such a way. According to scientists, they've come to the conclusion that, at least some scientists have come to the conclusion that our universe is inside of a black hole. And if you know anything about black holes, when you look at the event horizon, you're not seeing the event horizon, you're seeing behind you. The light is bending around. So if we want to take that same idea that Earth is surrounded by an ice wall that we can't get past, even if I don't see the literal ice wall, that is absolutely correct on one level. On one level, our perception is stuck. The way to get past that, the answer is, when is that going to happen? It's happening now. I've done it. So we talked about this can relate. We talked about NDEs. Did we talk about that in the recording or before?
Yes, a little bit earlier in the recording.
Okay. So I may have shared this, but if you look at people who have had near-death experiences, obviously those are the ones that came back. We don't know about the ones that didn't come back. And almost 100% of them, there will be some kind of scenario where the person is in like this waiting room. It might be a beautiful, meadow with, whatever, but it's still a waiting room. And they're talking to Jesus or Buddha or their grandfather or somebody like that. And there's like this door. And they start wanting to go across the door. And so what'll happen is they'll be given a choice. Do you want to stay here and go through that door, which is, that's where the party's really happening, or do you want to go back to Earth? And obviously they made the decision to go back to Earth. And we're never told why. We're just told if you go through that door, you can't come back. In this body, you can't come back. And we're not told why. Well, I can tell you why. I've been on the other side of that door. And but it almost destroyed me. Because on the other side of that door, you're not just a soul. You're not this limited soul. You become a God. You become this multi-dimensional God that has created all of the worlds and you become this thing that doesn't fit into a third dimensional mind anymore. So that is what we can do now. We haven't been able to do that. Now, I'm sure there's other people that light beings and ETs and whomever have taken them to these places. The ETs said, you're the first, when they told me. And they kind of said, we're trying to figure out how to do this without killing you. And I did. It almost destroyed me. So we can go beyond whatever limitation, the ice wall, the third dimensional perception, the video game, we can go beyond it now. The only ways I know how to do that are doing CE5 with the intention of connecting with a higher dimensional being, knowing that it's going to destroy your third dimensional understanding. and the interdimensional meditation that I lead. Those are the only two ways, I should say, those are the two most powerful ways. Because anything else, even, I was a spiritual master, qigong, yoga, I did all that stuff. You still have out of body experiences, but it's still tainted by this third dimensional ice wall, if you will. But if you want that, you have to make that decision. It's going to come for everybody. And it may come sooner than we realize. But if somebody wants that, they can make that decision. And if they do CE5 or interdimensional meditation with the goal of, I want to go beyond that. I want to go through that door that souls aren't allowed to do and come back to Earth. And I guarantee you something absolutely mind-blowing will happen for you. So there's my answer.
Okay. Love that. All right. Claire says, it was over 5 years ago. I was surrendering to the transformation necessary, had to leave where I was staying for nowhere in particular. Now I have much bigger dream of where I'd like to be and do. Nice.
Yeah.
And Robert has a question. Will the lion and the lamb lay together in 5D? My question is, will all creatures no longer consume each other as food?
Well, two answers to that. First one is, if that is what you want, then it's your job to create it. And you do that by intending it. So I have a place in 5D that I go. Again, 5D is just a word. Just a term. But I go to a place that is not part of this dimension. And in that world, I'm not eating animal flesh. I'm communicating to all the animals. I'm communicating to the plants. So we get all of our nourishment from the sun, from the ambient energy around us. Plants, plants can give us energy as well. So I'm going to say yes, but what I've also learned is that each of us create whatever frequency we're going to end up at. So if you want to be in that frequency, by the way, the lion and the lamb is a Mandela effect. I used to be...
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I used to be a preacher. You guys may not think by the way I talk.
Okay, what have you not done, Michael?
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
I was a Bible scholar and all of that. And so I know for a fact that was, that the lion will lay down.
That's how I was raised, understanding it too.
And now it's something else. And it's not just people rewrote it. You actually follow it. The reality has changed. It's now the wolf and I don't know, whatever. Yeah,
we'll have to look that one up. If somebody in the chat wants to look it up and let us know what it is. I know it changed though. Used to be the lion and the lamb. Now it's something else. Okay, so let's see. We've got another question here. Oh, let's see. Now it's a wolf, Claire said. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Which it definitely was never a wolf.
It was never
There's
a wolf.
No way.
I mean, there's still books and posters and we remember what it was.
Exactly. EP Pet says, have you noticed how the whales and the Sasquatch are making themselves more known and seen and curious and interacting with us? Yes, I feel like we've been hearing more of these things as well lately.
I interacted with a Sasquatch. They are not third dimensional beings. The two most frightening times in my life, first, Sasquatch. Second, the talking with the
mantis?
light beings, the mantis beings.
Oh, the light beings.
Most frightening experiences in my life.
Yeah, I have heard that Sasquatch is very elusive on purpose and that they're interdimensional, and that if you ever see one or interact with one, it's because they allowed you to. And it has to do with your frequency. If you are not vibrating at a specific frequency, you will definitely not see them. And that they actually are very docile, let's say, compared to what people seem to think they are. But I think they get a bad rap.
Yeah, I that's true. I had heard this. This was 20, 30 years ago. And I used to go backpacking up in the Sierras where Sasquatch supposedly lives. And somebody said, if you meditate and send out a message in meditation. Again, it's just like CE5. You send out a
Yeah.
message in meditation to talk with a Sasquatch, they'll show up. So sure
Yes, I've
enough,
heard
I
that.
happened to be up in the mountains on 9/10, not 9/11, but the night before. And I had meditated for a couple of weeks or something. And right at dusk, this being shows up outside of my camp, just outside of my firelight, and he screams.
Ooh.
And it was, the frequency of his scream was nothing I'd ever heard. It was higher than, a woman screaming in fear, and it was lower than a dinosaur, and all things in between. And the frequency went right through me, and it frightened me so much. It lasted for 3 seconds, and as soon as it stopped, my brain did this thing. It started erasing that. It started saying that didn't just happen, and it would have succeeded. As my brain was actually erasing that, he came in and screamed again for another 3 seconds. Went right through me, totally took me out of any third dimensional understanding. And then again, my brain said, okay, that didn't happen, and it started erasing it. And then he screamed a third time, and the third time my brain broke. My brain just went blank. And then there was just this silence, and the being was like, okay, so you wanted to talk to me? That was, and I said,
Yeah.
I can't do this. It'll kill me. Whatever you are, I'm not ready for it. Please, if you come into my
Yeah.
camp, I will die. You left. But looking back on it now, I know part of it was part of the lead up towards what happened in 2022. But yeah, Sasquatches are, they're on a whole other trip. They're on their own.
They are.
Yeah.
I actually have somebody that is has had an experience that I'm lined up to do an interview with. So
Wow.
hopefully that'll come out one of these days soon.
Mhm.
And I think this will probably be a good spot for us to wrap up. We're already at an hour and 40 minutes and 41 minutes. So I think we've taken up a lot of your time, but I just appreciate you, Michael. Thank you so much for coming back and talking with us and letting people interact and ask questions. And I appreciate everyone in the chat. You guys are awesome. I've got some regular names that showed up here, so thank you guys so much for that. We've got a couple more lives coming up. We have Lowell Johnson, which a lot of people know. He's coming up for a live. And by the way, if you've been watching those videos, we've done 3 videos with him, and the last one just was released earlier this week, and he's bringing along Dave. So anybody who's watching the videos will know who Dave is. And Dave he doesn't do very many interviews, and he's going to do the live with Lowell. So we get to ask him questions. He's had direct contact experiences as well. So I'm really excited about that. This Saturday, we've got a video coming out about manifestation, UK's top leading expert about manifestation. So that's really fascinating. And by the way, if anybody is interested in learning more about the mud floods, go ahead and put your comments in the comment section or in the chat, because I have somebody in mind that I'd like to interview who has a lot of information about the mud floods and has like a mini presentation. So anyway, I'd love to talk more about that. But thank you guys. We appreciate you so much. And anybody who's not subscribed to Michael's channel, it's Thunder Wizard. So look him up on YouTube. And he also has his website, thunderwizard.com, where he has a lot of great courses that he offers and meditations. And thank you again so much, Michael. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with and leave the audience with tonight?
It's been an absolute thrill. Thank you so much again for allowing me. Let's do this again anytime you want. I'm here. I've changed the title of my YouTube channel to my name, Michael Denny. However, just like as you see here, you can still, it is still found at Thunder Wizard. And I'm doing channeled readings. So if you go to my any of my websites, you'll find where to go, michaeldenny.org, DENNEY. And I'm looking to expand that and do a lot more readings. So
great.
There's my pitch.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely have to do this again. I think everyone really enjoyed it. So thank you all so much. I wish you to have the most wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us. And we will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a good night, everyone.